last time on How to Win the Loser's Game.
I laugh because I've been telling the same story for 52 years now.
Buffett has told people in advice in his 1996 shareholder letter, if you invest in an index fund, you're virtually guaranteed to outperform the vast majority of investors.
And the more research I did into it, the more I realized there were very few people who were able to sustain outperformance sufficiently to cover all the extra costs of active investing.
So we've explained how the academic evidence points overwhelmingly to indexing being the best way for the vast majority of people to invest. Index funds should form the biggest part of every portfolio. We've already mentioned the importance of asset allocation, deciding how much to invest in equities or bonds, for example. Another key decision is what type or types of index fund to go for. The traditional and still the most common type is the cap-weighted or market value-weighted fund. One drawback with cap-weighted funds is that as the price of a stock goes up, so does its weighting. That can sometimes leave you overweighted in a relatively small number of stocks.
Go back to 1999-2000, the technology bubble. You suddenly had 6 or 7 or 8% of a portfolio in Cisco, and the next thing it's bombed out. So the question then is there a better way of constructing a portfolio, a better way of constructing, if you like, an index? And some experiments in the past, have been going on for 10 years, have suggested there are better ways. I'll give you a really simple example. Instead of weighting by the market capitalization of each stock, how about weighting by, make it equal weighted. So you've got 100 stocks in the FTSE, put 1% in each. So that's the sort of thing that starts us researching, looking at the top 1,000 US stocks and asking us simple rules like that. We call them heuristics. Are they capable of forming portfolios that actually do better over time than, say, buying the S&P 500 or the FTSE 100?
You'll remember we looked at different types of risk, or beta, often known as factors. Certain types of stocks are more volatile but do offer higher returns in the long run. It's now possible to buy an index fund comprised entirely of small company or value stocks, for example, to complement conventional index funds. They're more expensive than cap-weighted funds, but still far cheaper than actively managed funds. This sort of strategy is usually referred to as smart beta, though others call it alternative beta, fundamental indexing, factor investing, or tilting. Whatever name you prefer to call it, it's becoming increasingly popular.
The overall cap weight market portfolio, including everything, not just stocks, is always a legitimate portfolio in any asset pricing model. It's always one of the so-called efficient portfolios. But if you take, for example, our work seriously, what it says is there are multiple dimensions of risk, and you can tilt towards these dimensions, so you can move away from the market portfolio towards these dimensions, depending on your taste for bearing different sources of risk. There isn't one strategy that's optimal or efficient in this sense. There's a whole spectrum.
A staunch proponent of this approach is Yves Schufferty, who runs Tobam, an asset management company based in Paris. For him, it's all about diversification. Ideally, the investor should be exposed to all the different risk factors.
In order to build a diversified portfolio, you will want to try your best to have your own risk evenly contributed by all the risk factors that are available in the universe. If every single source of risk, if every single risk factor evenly contribute to my own risk, by definition you will not be able to tell me that I am biased. And if you cannot say that I am biased, probably I will be able to say that I am diversified.
Others are more sceptical about smart beta, or at least that particular label.
I think the name is unfortunate in that it seems to suggest that it's a smart outcome when in fact smart is a requirement when it comes to smart beta, as it's called. It's a factor bet. It's a rules-based factor bet where somebody is choosing to index a part of the market or part of a broader market cap index. Now that in itself can be fine. But I think it's important to understand that you're taking a very active decision at the start there to actively go after one factor of the market.
I think it makes it more complicated for an investor because previously you had active and passive. It's taken us a long time to get across what passive is, and I still don't think many people understand what it is. Yeah, we believe that smart beta is another way of getting an extra 1 or 2% return per year, but to the average person on the street, I think it does confuse them and just means that there's more product for them to actually try to understand.
I think smart beta is another industry label that has emerged out of the funds management community, possibly out of some marketing departments, cynically. The best question an investor can ask is, where do returns come from? And really no one has studied this more deeply than the academic community. And so when it comes to investment capital, it makes so much sense to do with that capital only that which has been proven. And that's where dimensions of return become so powerful, because they've survived peer review, they've survived intense scrutiny.
Complicated or not, is smart beta an option worth exploring? Well, it might be, depending on the level of risk you're willing to take.
One touchstone to remember: the average investor has to hold the market portfolio. If you decide you're going to buy value, somebody else has to hold less value. If you're going to buy Microsoft, somebody else has to hold less Microsoft. The average portfolio has to add up to the market. And anybody who outperforms the market, somebody else has to underperform the market. We need a better theory of why we should do anything but just hold the market index. I do think there is one. And that is, if you view these as alternative dimensions of risk, and that what we're doing in asset markets is basically writing insurance to each other. Look at the stocks. Are you really the kind of investor who can bear that kind of risk? And what you are doing is you're writing insurance to other investors who don't want to bear that kind of risk. What is the risk? Why are some people not willing to bear that risk? Why can't I bear that risk? Is a good place to start thinking about what are these alternative betas you want to invest in.
Next time on How to Win the Loser's Game.
You're looking for cheap, ugly, disappointing, obscure, and otherwise orphaned stocks.
Morningstar did some really groundbreaking work a couple years ago where they found the best predictor of future performance is actually cost.
If you don't know what you're doing, don't step into the casino.